We're live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Robby Rowland. Robby's a gentleman I've been actually following for a while because my son plays ball. He's a pitcher. And I'm amazed by everything he's done, how he's built a brand. I've been an entrepreneur for 27 years, so everybody knows my background. And today's going to be all about Robby. I want to kind of go through his journey, playing when he first picked up a baseball, having his dad. Your dad played in the majors, correct?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this. Let's talk. When did baseball start becoming a passion for you? What age?
Oh my gosh. This is going to sound like a joke, but probably like right when I was born.
Yeah.
I was, but like, it's serious though. Like I was very fortunate. Like I say that all the time, because my dad was playing when I was born. So when I was born, like normal life for me as a baby was like the baseball life, right? Like the going to stadiums, the eating concession stand foods, the living out of a suitcase, going from city to city. That was like normal, right? So like, I mean, granted, like I was like 1 to 7 or 8 years old, but it's like, that was like what I was born into. And that's where honestly it became like my passion, because I think it was just the normal life for me. And I love that life. And then when my dad retired, it was like, okay, well now I have to make that lifestyle like mine, and it was like, I got to do that by any means necessary. And it was the only thing I knew. So I was like somewhat good at it.
Were you always focused on being a pitcher, or was there a position you played?
Oh man, we talk about this a lot too, like the whole pitcher only, like the PO dynamic, right? Like everyone talks about. It's like, no man, like I was just a ball player, right? Like you grew up, like my dad was a catcher, right? So like just the whole position player lifestyle, that was like something I was always like turned on for. But my dad, like again, I was super fortunate to have him. But he saw the starting pitching lifestyle, and like he saw the way that those guys went about their job, and he said like, that's the best job in the world, right? You pitch once in every 5 days and then you're chilling, and it was like, I want that for my son. The only thing I will say that I was mad at him for was he didn't make me left-handed. Unfortunately, everyone says I act like a left-hander, but I'm not.
So growing up, where did you go to high school for high school ball?
So like that was the whole thing was so when my dad got done playing, the conversation was with my mom and him was like, where do you want to raise the children? Because they were both from small town where now I am, Cloverdale, California, small town, Northern California, Sonoma County, wine country. Big identity crisis, because you have like wine country, you have the redwoods, you have like all these, the weed capital of the world's up north, and like they have all these like different personalities like all trying to mesh. So it explains why I'm so weird. But yeah, so like the conversation was, where do you want to raise them? Because it was like they kind of lived everywhere. Spent a lot of time on the East Coast, with my dad being in Detroit with the Tigers, and then getting traded to the Red Sox. So spent a lot of time on the East Coast in Florida, and then they were just like, no, let's raise them, where we grew up. So small town, Cloverdale, California, man, like 8,000 people. My graduating class was like, I don't know, 75.
Wow.
Yeah, so super small town. I used to say, like, every time someone asked me where you're from, I'd say like small town, Cloverdale, California. We only have 2 stoplights, but we just got 3 more stoplights in town, man. So we're freaking moving on up. We got a Starbucks now. Yeah, so that's where I grew up, right? So I got the small town perks and the small town vibe, and got to learn kind of that way. And then, holy smokes, this is going to be such a long episode if we're diving into my whole story. This is great.
Was your dad like a celebrity back home in a small town like that?
So yeah, so it's interesting because I know him as just dad. Like he's just
of course.
Like,
I'm asking that. I just bought a property up in a place called Sable Beach. It's a little community with a little beach house for the fam. And my next door neighbor is an ex-NHLer, and he grew up there. And it's a small little community, and this guy is like a superstar. Like everybody knows him, everybody wants to be around them and stuff like that. So was that similar? Now as an adult, you look back, was that similar?
Right. Yeah. So like I didn't know it at the time, right? Like, and when we moved back, I think I moved back when I was in second grade, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. So I just knew him as like, that's just dad. Like I knew there was something different about it because I had to do that whole dynamic of moving schools kind of
Yeah.
often, you know, in my
Yeah.
childhood. So I knew
Yeah.
there was like something different. But yeah, like, so this is where he's from, right? So he went to high school here, played 3 sports, you know, was an all-state basketball player, all-state football player, actually went to college to play football originally. His story is more unique than mine. So like he didn't play baseball right out of high school. Kind of like got kicked off the high school team or something, like small town, like kind of hick vibes, right, with him. And didn't cut it. Went to like Ventura College to try to play football. Didn't happen. He went and then worked in the woods as a tree faller, lumberjack in it, dude. And he just was super content with his life. Then like rekindled with my mom, and then was playing in like a beer league, merchant ball league. And a junior college coach saw him playing this league and was like, you should come out and play for my junior college, which was Mendocino College at the time. And he was like, I don't think so. Then my mom was like, no, you better freaking go and play, dude. Like you're only young once. And so it was my mom's persuasion that influenced my dad's decision to go play. He went to college 1 year, broke all these records, got drafted by the Tigers 17th round, ended up like not knowing at the time, but the scout faked his age because he didn't go to college right after high school, right? So everyone thought it was 19 or something like that, but he was actually like 21 or 22. So they said he was like, all this stuff, dude. It's
That's it.
freaking crazy.
That's some Dominican stuff happening there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was like, I like, because I never knew this until I actually got older and they actually like explained the whole system, like the whole thing to me.
Yeah.
Because I was always confused. I'd look at like one of his cards, and his card said his birth year was 97 or 67. And
Yeah.
I'm like, he was born in 64. Why does it say that? And that was the whole thing, was that like the scout that signed him, or maybe it was the college coach or something like that,
Yeah.
was like, no, he's 19. And they didn't know it at the time and they just rolled with it. And so yeah, and we have the Sports Center recording, I think somewhere on VHS, of Chris Berman like breaking the news on Sports Center when my dad was with the Red Sox, because they had like a beat writer like come to our high school and like who's this Rich Rowland guy? Because in '94, before the strike, he was kind of killing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the whole thing. Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, but back to the question. Yeah, so it was like, you know, everyone knew him. And then it was cool because like everyone that he went to school with had kids around the same time. And so then I went to school with all of like
Yeah.
their sons, right? So it was like this whole generational thing.
Yeah.
And we were super small school. Like I said, we were like Division 5 in California. But like when it came to sports, especially basketball, like powerhouse, dude. Like
Seriously,
this
huh?
like kind of small town, like
Did you
yeah,
play
like this
basketball?
Hoosiers. So that I was a basketball player.
You
All like
were,
growing up. I
huh?
know we started the show by talking about my passion for baseball, but yeah, like I was going to college for 2 sports. Yeah.
Okay, that's news. I didn't know. I had no clue about that. What position did you play?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you a point guard?
I was like a point guard,
Yeah.
shooting guard, center. Yeah, because like we my high school, we were just you know, we run the dribble drive. So it was like we didn't really have positions. It was kind of
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
everyone, you know. But yeah, it says it. I think on one of my cards, it says it like on the back of it, like my decision to turn down basketball too. It was like, oh, nice. Now I got that to show to my kids.
So in high school, so you did the 4 years of high school. You got drafted right out of high school, correct?
Yeah, 2010.
Did you have any mindset, like, was this a family decision, or did you have any mindset of your parents pushing you to go to college? Like, what was your mindset with that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like looking back at it now that I'm older, I wish. I don't want to say I wish. I don't live like a life of regrets or anything. I don't
No,
want
you
to change
you
really
can't
anything.
you can't. I love that. You
You
can't.
can't, right?
No,
Like it kind of eats you
no,
up, and yeah.
no.
So like I don't look at it like that. But the question that I often get, obviously, being kind of somewhat stereotyped with like a draft bust, right?
Yeah.
Is like, do you wish you went to college? And the thing that I'll say is like, to be completely honest, dude, was like I didn't even explore the idea of being a college student, because ever since I think it was my like sophomore year in high school. No, I would say like after the area code games of my junior year, it was like, I was like, whatever I got to do, like, this dream of mine to be just a baseball player, a reality, I'm going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
The idea of just, all right, I'm waking up and I'm a ball player. I don't worry about anything else. And I just get to play baseball. Like, I mean, shoot, that was the idea ever since I was, freaking 1 year old. Right. But then the whole basketball thing like threw a huge wrench in it. but yeah, I think looking back, just because of the struggles, I guess that I'd say I had early in my career, there was so much more that I had to learn. And that was the downside. It's where we can kind of segue into like the downside of small town and small school is the competition, right? So although I grew up playing against really good competition with like my brother's age group, I always played like 3 years ahead of mine. But when it came to high school and facing like high school baseball competition, it was just, not the same. And that's probably one of those things that affected me. So when people ask me about like the whole like college dynamic, that's one thing that I could say, because I was learning how to fail when I was in professional baseball and I had never failed before. And so learning how to fail on the fly in pro, it's just kind of tough.
So, okay, let's go back. So you got drafted, what round, what team? Let's just, for the audience that doesn't know your story, you got drafted, what round, what team?
Yeah. So I was third round. I was 88th overall by the Arizona Diamondbacks.
So third round, you said?
Yeah, third round.
Okay. So you went the next year, you're 18, I'm assuming, going into spring training, I guess you're called into spring training at 18.
Yeah. So it was actually rare what we did. And this is another really cool part of the story / journey is, so my brother, 3 years older than me, right? So he never applied himself in school. So he got stuck with like the junior college and then the NAIA route. Yeah. But he was 21 when I was 18, and he was, he got drafted out of high school by the Rockies, and he was on the draft board again for that 2010 year. And we had the same agent. So it was like one of those, we did what was called a brother deal at the time. I don't even know if they do this anymore, but we did a brother deal to where like I would agree to sign for like the slot, because that was back in the old draft where, people, the high school kids would typically hold out all summer and get paid billions of dollars. And I didn't care about money at the time, dude. I was freaking oblivious. I was just like, I just want to throw baseballs. Let's go. So I was like, yeah, dude, brother deal. So what it was like, I agreed to a certain amount of money. It was like the slot. And then the team would agree to sign my brother as like the free agent deal. And then so my brother just had to like call the teams I was on the draft board with and just say like, don't draft me, I'm going to sign free agent to the Diamondbacks. So we both went to the Arizona, and we both went to, at the time, was rookie ball in the Pioneer League in Missoula, Montana. So we both got to play on the same team that first year. So I signed early, obviously, because I wanted to just like right after I graduated high school, I went left, played, right? Yeah. That was the whole idea. It was like, I really wanted to just be a ball player, man. So I was like, I don't care about money. Let's go. Here we go. And so we played that first season together. He tore it up. He had a way better year than I did.
What position did he play?
Running joke.
What position did he play?
He was a catcher. He's a catcher, like Pops, and he actually caught my professional debut.
How cool is that?
I have that memory.
How cool is that?
June 30th.
Do you guys have? Do you have that on video?
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's pretty. It's pretty special. Like that's one of those things.
Well, my mom and dad made the trip.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. As a parent, I mean, that's pretty special, right?
Oh my gosh, the outing wasn't special, I'll be honest. But the memory was very special. Yeah, I wish at the time I knew what was happening. And I look back at it as I'm older and having more experience in this game. At the time, it was just like, oh, my brother Richie's catching me again. We grew up playing together. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it was just kind of like another game. But now it's like every year that passes is another kind of recollection, I guess, of just how like special that moment was, and how much like we got to kind of like, I mean, that's cool. Like, right. Like how many people get to say that? That's really,
it's very rare.
Really
I mean,
cool. I wish
very rare.
Yeah.
Very, very rare.
Yeah.
And just the bare fact that you're a catcher. I mean, you get guys play on the same team. Even that's still pretty rare. I mean, who are the guys right now for the Cleveland, the catcher and his brothers on the team too? Or I don't know if he was on the playoff roster, but he's a Canadian, Mississauga, Ontario. He's the one that hit the home run and did the whole baby rocking for Derek Cole.
Oh yeah.
Him and his brother,
Yeah.
Nyler. That was pretty crazy. Josh Naylor, that's it. And his brother's on the team too. I think they're both catcher. I mean, his brother's a catcher too, I think.
I didn't know his brother was on the team.
Yeah, his brother's on the team, and they're both from Mississauga, Ontario.
Oh, okay. The cool one is the Nola brothers. So you have Aaron Nola, the Phillies, who's shoving, and then you have Austin Nola, the catcher for the Padres.
Yeah,
like they're gonna meet, right?
They play
against each other.
Yeah.
That's gonna be cool.
So I'm gonna just ask you one quick question about your brother, and then I want to go back to you. Your brother's career, how far did he go to? Did he get to the majors?
No, so that was my first understanding of the political side of professional baseball, because I didn't know about that when I got in 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, holy smokes, this isn't fair. He batted 300 his first year, came back to spring training, got released. And I was like, wait, what? And then you start to realize, like, oh, it's because they invested X amount of money in these guys. And then you just get to this point where, like, it's not about like how good you are. It's about how much they paid, because, and that's just the way it is. No knock on any organization, but I completely understand in terms of, you make a pretty substantial investment in somebody. You want to see them through and give them multiple opportunities. And then the guys you don't give a whole lot of investment to, like, sorry,
Yeah.
And I get it now, but at the time it was just like, all right, so now you're telling me that I'm going to go out and perform in this organization for this organization.
That just kind of
like,
yeah,
it's just like cut my brother, like screwed over too, right? Like it's not like he was a scrub, didn't have he had like one of the better years on that team. And that was a tough one for me to swallow, because that was kind of when I was going through this whole, like, kind of rechanging of my identity, to where 18 years old, like, my ish don't stink, dude. I just got drafted, right? Like, I'm chilling, I'm good. And then 19, I come back and I realized, like, man, I went from being a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a huge pond. And it was kind of this whole, like, my world's kind of starting to flip upside down. And, there's a lot going on. And that's just the whole part of, like, as an athlete, the maturing process. But it was tough because, I'm
sorry, when you go look back, and what I'm going to ask is, it was crazy. Me and my son were watching yesterday. We started watching, we got through 2 episodes of the new Jeter on Apple TV. They have a doc series on Jeter. And it shows him right out of high school in the first year and a half. He struggled, like, really struggled.
Yeah.
Mentally, were you more prepared because of your dad, or you were less prepared because you thought it was just an easier ride? Like, how was that pressure on yourself mentally at that point, right? Because I mean, obviously the anxiety, the stress is there because you have to perform, but how were you mentally?
Yeah. So, like, I would say the mental hurdle was, like, the biggest hurdle. Like I said earlier, it was like, I know people that maybe don't know baseball kind of get confused when this is said, but I had to learn how to fail, and I never had failed before. And what that means is just, like, understanding that there's this process in which you have to kind of go through. That is just the game. The game is built on failure. And I knew that because I obviously, like, dad would, prepare me for that mentally, but I didn't ever go through that because physically I was just better. I was just better, right, than a lot of, like, the competition growing up. And that's kind of the same dynamic as a lot of high school kids that get drafted, right? Is like, they're just better than, their talent pool at the time. And then, so for me, the learning of how to fail was just more of a process to be like, okay, what can I control within this work day? What can I control? And then what can't I control? And for me, I've always been somebody that hates to lose more than he loves to win. So when I'd freaking get, punched in the jaw, it was hard for me to kind of bounce back and just trust that process of, the consistent improvement. Because I kind of was in this idea of, like, I wanted to see instant results, right? Instead of just seeing it more in a big picture, in which everyone always kind of talks about when you're an 18-year-old or 19-year-old kid in a system. Everyone always talks about the big picture and talks about your process and projectability, where it was me, I had so much success early on that I just got accustomed to that. And so when it stopped altogether, the success stopped altogether, as a perfectionist, it was hard for me to kind of, I guess, trust my preparation, trust my process moving forward. Like, is this actually working? Like, am I actually doing this the right way? Do I need to drastically change? So then you get into this whole concept of, identity and foundation, and this whole, okay, well, if this isn't working, do we got to reinvent the wheel? And the hardest thing for me at that time, man, was I was 19 years old. I've always been a people pleaser, and I've identified that now as I've gotten older. And I was around so many coaches that just wanted to help, and I was trying to be a sponge. I was trying to consume everyone's information or everyone's 10 or 2 cents, what they had, for me to improve. And what happened was, now I just completely lost who I was and what made me good in the first place. And I'm trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to change each and every day because I'm not content with who I was at the time. And that's where we can kind of get into that fine line of like contentment and complacency and consistency, right? As a ball player, you got to have some sense of foundation of knowing who you are, what you do well, and then knowing those little fine pieces of your game that can use improvement without reinventing the whole wheel system. So that was really hard for me to navigate at the time. And the mental struggles of everything, where it's like, now you start talking about, shoot, I was 88th overall, I'm having all this struggles, like, I'm supposed to be good, I thought I was good. There's a lot that goes on, and looking back at it now, I don't even think I realized at the time what I was actually going through. I just knew it sucked and I wanted it to change. Right. But I feel like that's life, right? You go through things and you don't quite know how to respond to what you're going through, and you do the best you can with the information that you have. And then like 5 years goes by in a blink of an eye, and you look back at it and you go, oh, I learned how to do this in that process, or I learned how to be this guy. And now I'm better equipped now to potentially help somebody else in their journey, and so super grateful for everything I've gone through. It sucked at the time, but that's life.
Everything's a lesson, right? I mean, everything we go through in life is a lesson. You have to take it as that. And obviously you've turned into, I mean, all the learning curves you've done, and you've turned into being able to utilize that into teaching and helping others, which is incredible. Because a lot of guys will know a craft, know an art, but know it for themselves, not know how to reflect and turn it around to somebody else. And it feels like, it's like where you are in your career right now. It's like I would say most major league pitchers, when they're in their 40s and 50s, and they can sit back and just watch on TV, and they're reflecting on watching other people. Mm-hmm. Now they can start putting these motions together, these actions together, this process together to help others. And you've figured it out quite young. You're still quite young. So
thanks, man. I needed that.
Let's talk about, I'm going to go in a whole bunch of directions here. I just want to dive into quickly minor leagues. And why don't we talk about this? Because we've had locally, I'm part of the board of baseball for Brampton here, and we've had a handful of kids, young guys, get drafted, and one of them got drafted in the Cub system. Exact same kind of scenario. Pitcher came up, Team Canada, supposed to be the next stud. Went 1 year, was playing in Myrtle Beach Pelicans, if I'm mistaken, which is their single A. Ended up going to double A, had a cup of tea, actually had a great run in double A, thought he had his best season, and then was cut. And then it was a process of just playing independent ball for a few years, played for Team Canada, played up on Team Canada for another 4 or 5 times, went to Brazil, traveled, like made the most of his opportunity. And now he's actually a high school teacher, a local guy. He coaches some kids. He's a high school teacher, went back to school. But I look back and I see, and when I talk to him about the minor league grind, hotels, microwave food, just let's talk about the reality, because people think I'm drafted and now I've made it, and they don't understand single A, double A, even triple A. Some people at triple A, how hard it is, the road trips, the motels,
Yeah.
the bunking with other guys in the room, the quality of the food, and you trying to build the off season. A lot of these guys are paying for their own
Yeah.
training, their own stuff off season. Let's talk a little bit about the grind before you get to where you want to get to and how hard it is and the reality of it all is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've heard I heard AAA is actually the worst because they got to do the planes. They got to do the plane flights,
Yeah.
at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But all right, so I'll preface all this by saying I was very fortunate, right? So I was very fortunate to be able to go into the minor league grind with a little bit of money from my signing bonus.
Okay.
When I hear stories of how my mom and dad went through it all with 2 kids and what they had, I mean, that's the grind. It's always funny. I'm the worst person to ask about the minor league grind because like I said, I was fortunate. I was financially stable. I didn't have to worry about, oh, I can't eat today because I don't have any money or whatever. Very fortunate. And then B, I just love this freaking game. The game itself trumps anything I have to do,
Yeah.
any bus ride I have to get on to play it. It's like a running joke, when we have a long bus ride, even now, last season, right? So I'm 30, and last season we had a 10-hour bus ride. Everyone's just freaking all pissed off, and I'm just sitting up there like a kid in the candy store, 18-year-old Rob, still just loving it. This is it, man. But you guys got to understand, this is what I was born into, and it's just it's what I knew. It's what I know. And I've been also super fortunate to have this game taken away from me on multiple occasions, whether it be an injury or whether it be, being released from a team, that now I've shifted my mindset into being just way more, grateful for every opportunity that I get. So whatever comes with that, it's better than the alternative. It's better than not doing it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, again, going back to the whole life, everything that you go through is a lesson. And if you are mindful and attentive to the things that life is throwing at you, you can learn and obtain a lot of information, to better yourself and better individuals around you. But yeah, the grind is tough, man. I mean, shoot, there's I think the longest bus ride I've ever been on is 14 hours. My first year we had a bus ride. We were going from Missoula, Montana, Wyoming, ended up getting stuck on a freaking mountaintop because there was construction that we had to play that next night. We got in at 4:30. No one slept, but you're going to the Motel 6. My first road trip of professional baseball was to Motel 6, Helena, Montana. Cockroaches on the floor. I'm walking into the room let's go, baby. We made it. Let's do it. Everyone's just what the heck? Because a lot of guys, you got to realize, are coming from D1 colleges, right? And their life was pretty luxury, right? That first year, had a couple of guys from, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Florida State, where they're taking chartered flights, getting good meal money. And now it's holy smokes, freaking, ain't it. But it gets better. Shoot, man, I was talking to somebody the other day about it, how it's crazy how much in just a decade things have changed. So when my dad was playing and when I heard stories of the minor leagues, it was holy smokes, this is tough, right? You watch Bull Durham and you're oh man, $20 I can get us a rain out, we need it. And nowadays, I played indie ball this last year and we're going to freaking cathedrals and we're getting freaking good post-game spread. We went to Canada, play Quebec, and it's the post-game dinner is a freaking 5-star meal. And we're just holy smokes, this ain't supposed to be indie ball, right?
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how things are evolving now that we are taking recognition into how just grindful the minor league lifestyle is, especially with the pay, right? There's people kind of taking charge on trying to change that for the betterment of the athletes, right? Because I think just the overall desire maybe to play the sport is probably down, maybe due to something like that. People don't want to probably go through that. So I think they're doing a better job now trying to compensate guys more and make it a little bit more appealing. But
do you,
yeah,
do you think that is the difference from you talk about somebody from North America that comes from a comfy home, that comes from a comfy background, that's never needed nothing, and then going to struggle in the minors, to you get a guy from South America that had nothing, and now
Yeah.
their mission is just to get everything they can. So they
Yeah.
have a different understanding
Oh
of where it
man.
is. It is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't think it's all of that, right? Like I think there's a lot of other intangibles, but 100%, man. Like when you think about what, and I'm not saying every like American is like this, right? But you look
Yeah.
at the differences between the Latin Americans that play and the Americans that play. It's two totally different styles, right? Whereas like the Americans, they grew up and it was like kind of more of a don't do this, don't do that type.
Yeah.
And then the Latin Americans, they got all this flair and flash, but all it is just joy, right? Because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're playing this game that they grew up just loving and they're going to show that passion.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you start talking about American baseball and it's kind of like there's these unwritten rules, right? Like I grew up with a dad that played in the 90s. So it was kind of like, don't do that. Don't hit a homer and show your guy up. And it's like, that's kind of the more of the physical side of it. But like, yeah, for sure. Going to the other component of that is you get put in these situations where as an American or whatever, as somebody that had a comfortable lifestyle, you put in these situations where now all of a sudden off the field, you're not comfortable, which will then lead into you not being comfortable in performance, right? Because your preparation is maybe thrown off. I'll never forget, like, you know, my second year, it was kind of similar to that. And I'm not one to like complain about a living situation or whatever, but it was like we had a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 to 8 dudes sleeping on air mattresses. And at the time I'm 19. So I wake up in the morning, I feel okay like every day, but you don't realize how the course of a season, like that takes a toll on
Yeah.
you, right? Like, you know, there's things, you're not eating the right food. You're, you know, kind of, you're grinding in that sense, you know, eating late, eating fast food because you can't cook because, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
living conditions aren't good. And maybe it's the first time you're kind of thrown into that. So now on the field, your performance suffers. Whereas like maybe from other, you know, other people, other individuals that play the game had a different kind of upbringing. Maybe it was very similar to that. So that's just all they know. And now they
Yeah.
get thrown into it. You know, I see the same thing with guys that get drafted and leave home for the first time in a while, right? Like it's uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
whether they like it or not, like that uncomfort will then influence performance.
100%.
So yeah, for sure.
The first time you were released or cut,
Mm,
or released, cut, same thing, or injured,
yeah.
like that, the first time that you were pushed away from what you love doing at a pro level, when was it?
Um, so that's interesting. So in 12, I was traded. So 12,
So
I was traded from the Diamondbacks to Pittsburgh. And that was kind
that
of a
is after,
weird.
is that after 2 years, give or take?
Yeah. So I spent 10, 11, and then spring training of 12. I got traded at the last day of spring training, Pittsburgh. That was a weird dynamic. It was like kind of, whoa, like, okay, I guess that team that drafted me didn't want me. And it was kind of a weird situation as it is. So just like real quick, when I got drafted, I was drafted by, you know, the front office of X individuals, right? And then the next year, everyone got fired. So it was like everyone that wanted me in that organization was gone.
It's
And it was
gone.
like
Yeah.
it was new front office. So it was
Yeah.
kind of weird as it is. But yeah, 12 I was traded and it was like on one hand, it was like that's the organization that drafted me. Now, you know, they don't want me. Got it. But on the other hand, it was like I just spent 2 years kind of struggling, right? Grinding to find an identity.
Yeah.
The best thing for a ball player is a start, like a new start, right?
Yeah.
New scenery, new everything. Like go be the person that you want to be instead of the person that you're grinding, trying to change, you know, in that system. So I was like super excited when it happened. It sucked having to go from like Arizona spring training to Florida spring training.
Yeah.
But that's when like my career kind of started to shift as well. Had to like a reinvent myself. The change of scenery really helped. And then spent 12, 13, 14 with Pittsburgh. And then so the first time that I got released and cut from a team that said like, hey, you're not good for us, totally different mental state, was 2014. So 2014 of August of 2014, this is where we start getting to the point in my career where it was a lot of like mental struggles, right?
Yeah.
because I thought, like, I had seen success at that point. 2012, I'd say, was one of my better years. And it was like, all right, now we're starting to piece things together. And I was still 21 at the time.
Yeah.
So it was like, you're young, dude. Like,
For a pitcher, very young.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the whole upside of getting drafted at 18 and signing, right? It was like, you get thrown in. Yeah. You're probably going to struggle early on, but you're going to have a good window now to, get second chances and whatnot. So kind of like, now we were working our way up, and then got hit with this mental kind of maybe trying to be somebody that I was not, trying to do more, trying to impress, and all these kind of things that I had struggled with early on, but now I was on a different level because I was at a higher league, and so went through this whole struggled with, like, you're a baseball guy, so like the yips, right? Like that's a huge dynamic in any sport, right? Like where you're known for doing something, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you just physically can't do that one thing that you're supposed to do.
I was this weekend, I was just binge watching with my wife, Ted Lasso. I don't know if you ever watched those. And when he says the word yips,
I heard it was great.
He's like, oh, such a good show. And as a show, they got a sports psych in to help the team. And she goes, it's the yip. And all of them are like, don't say that word. So it's funny you say that.
But it's the worst, right? Like, because as an alpha male, right? Like as an athlete, the last thing you want to admit is that you're dealing with some mental stuff, right? Like mental health. And this is why, honestly, this is a huge reason of why I started what I started online and with my brand, because I went through it, man. I went through the ringer, right? And as I said before, like, I've always been a people pleaser. So what happened was I was like so fixated on trying to please others and like focused on my external environment as opposed to like internally, right? Like I wasn't trying to please myself. And next thing you knew, it was like, who am I? Right? Like, what am I doing, man? I'm trying to change who I am every single day to please that guy. And then I'm trying to do this because he told me to do that, this and that. And when you're struggling in the game, that's what you try to do, right? You try to please other people, like your coaching staff, by like working with them and like trying to obtain new information and just trying to, like, be a sponge. But when you're performing really well and like things are good, no one touches you, right? Like that's just the dynamic of professional sports. And so when I was going through this mental stuff, man, it was like I was trying to do anything and everything to like still like, be looked at as somebody that that was acceptable on our team, and it's embarrassing when you go through it, because shoot, you're freaking known to do one thing of throw this dang ball like where you want it, and then you go out and perform. And I'll never forget my last outing, I threw 15 pitches, I threw 14 balls. Wow. And it was like, I said it like, I was like, I might as well be throwing with the opposite hand, because I'm so mentally effed right now, right? Like I don't know what I'm doing. And so it was cool, man, to see how this all unfolded, like getting released, because I was like super okay with it. I was like, yeah, I got it. Like, I understand this, right? Like, I'm not performing up to my standards. Like there's always somebody trying to take your job. And as soon as I got released, I got this like weight off my shoulders, and it was like, okay, dude, we started over before. Now it's really time to start over. And it's not time to start over and change to somebody new. It's time to start over and change to the person that got you freaking, 88th overall, third round. Like, come on, man. Who are we? Let's go find that.
So let me ask you something, Robby. When you're going through that process, was there anybody you could reach out to? Like most teams now, and I'm assuming all teams, even right through the minors, have some type of sports psychologist working with them, because it's so open now. When you were doing it, was it so close where it was something people still didn't talk about back then?
Kind of, but we had a mental conditioning team with Pittsburgh, and I loved everyone that I worked with. Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, man. Like, it made things worse. The only reason I'll say this, and this is why I like doing what I do, because I have played and I have kind of experienced this fine line of mental skills coaching / time to back off. Yeah. Because I went from somebody that, to be honest, man, I didn't know really what I was doing. I just knew I was doing it well. So when it comes to baseball, there's so much simplicity within these complexities, right? Yeah, I agree. Trying to hit a freaking round ball with a round bat, like moving going fast, stuff doesn't make sense.
No,
But at the foundation of the game,
it's beautiful.
throw the ball, hit the ball, right?
The
Like there's so much
basics.
simplicity in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was like I knew that there were some struggles, right? Like I knew that I was kind of the skills of my craft were slipping, and I knew it was kind of in between the ears, right? With a confidence aspect, like we can kind of talk about this all day, like what influences confidence? Is confidence external motivated or is it internal?
Yeah.
I was struggling with both, right? So when you're struggling, you're not getting a whole lot of external confidence. Obviously, you're not going to get internal confidence if you're a perfectionist and you're not seeing the results you want. So then it was like, yeah, we got a mental skills team. Perfect. Let's go chat. Next thing you know, it was like, I'm now opening up all of these different questions in my head. What is my pre-pitch routine? What is my breathing routine? What am I focused on? Where's my visualization? Am I breathing through my nose, or am I breathing through my mouth or my eyelids, or am I like doing this, and all these things. As a 18-year-old kid, you would just like throw me the ball and I'd be like, all right, let's go to work. Let's go have fun. Right. Like that was my big thing. And then all of a sudden, for me internally, the task of throwing the ball became just super over complex. And it used to never be that. It was like, okay, I want to throw this pitch right there. I'm just going to do it. And I know I'm going to do it because I've seen myself do it over and over again. And I have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And then when you struggle, right, it's all of a sudden, holy smokes, this is the hardest thing in the world. How did I ever do this? Right. So that's, I learned a lot of like really cool, like skill acquisition concepts from the mental side of it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't regret kind of really leaning towards that. Right. So I've always struggled with like ADD and all this stuff growing up, but without knowing it, I learned how to target it better when I was a kid, because it was fun and I targeted thoughts differently.
Yeah.
And then when I got older and started struggling, now my thoughts were, man, I hope I don't throw this ball. Man, I hope I don't freaking give up, all these like very negative connotation thought processes.
Yeah.
So that was a whole, process in and of itself to go through. But, I've said it multiple times, like I needed to go through that to be now better equipped moving forward with potentially somebody else. But man, it sucks at the time.
So that process, you were 20. How old were you when you got released? 23 or 24?
Yeah, I was 22. I was 22.
So you're still a baby.
Still young. Yeah.
So give me the understanding from there. You went back home. Did you go back home? Take some time for yourself?
So this was like probably the best thing for me, and that was like best thing for my entire career, to be honest with you. So it's 2014. I get released in August, right? So that's like, there was only a couple weeks left in the season. Yeah. So I knew at that time, like, I'm probably not going to latch on with another team to finish the year for a couple weeks. Like, so I'm not even focused on that. And I'm not even ready for that. I got a couple calls from indie ball because I had to drive from where I got released, Florida, to California. Yeah. And I called Pops and I was like, I'm coming home. We're fixing this stuff. Like you and me are coming back. Like we're getting back to this. Right? I love it. Yeah. And through my couple of years in pro ball, it was kind of different, to be honest, because I'd come back and it was like Pops would say something, it'd be like in one ear, out the other, right? Like, nah, you don't know, man. I'm around all these pitching guys all year. Like you were a catcher, whatever. But growing up, it was like, that was the only guy I had. That was the only guy I listened to. So I called him. I was like, hey, I'm putting all my ego aside. Like, we're getting right. Okay. Like, you know me better than probably anyone. Like, let's get this right. Right. So made the trip. And I basically said, I'm going to take all of, the rest of August. I'm not going to touch a ball. We're going to start September 1st. We're going to take September, October, November. I had this whole plan, like super strategized on how to get back to like my roots. Right. Yeah. And sure enough, man, the thing worked, like the whole idea was like, I need to get out of this idea that I'm a pitcher. I need to get back to that idea that I'm a ball player. I'm an athlete. And pitching is just what I do. Yeah. Right. So like Pops, we'd take ground balls, we'd take fly balls, we'd do all these things that I just did in high school without even realizing it. Right. And got out of this whole like idea behind pitching mechanics and like things like XYZ. And it was like, no, dude, like I'm just going to throw, I'm going to move, I'm going to enjoy it. And that was the best time in my life because it kind of brought this whole joy of the game back and the process of it. It
Yeah.
wasn't a grind anymore. And obviously it helps when like, you start seeing kind of things start to unfold the way you want it to, as opposed to like, man, I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool journey for me. Like within 3 months, I went from like, shoot, when I got released, I was struggling. So I was like throwing like 84, 85.
Yeah.
3 months, I was back up. I was up to like 95, 96. I threw for some scouts. The first time I threw, like the Cardinals were like, we want you. Like, you look
Yeah.
great. I signed that day, St. Louis. All I was saying to guys too is cool, man. Like I was just like, give me an invite to spring training. Don't even agree to terms with anything. I just want an invite. And and like I said, I was 22 turning 23.
Yeah.
So they gave me an invite to camp. I come to camp and it was minor league camp. No one knew who I was. And I come in and I'm just like, having gone all through what I've gone through, I was just like super happy to be there. Just had a jersey.
Yeah.
I was like, I had this so much joy about the game, and that influenced like the performance of it. Right. So like it was my first time kind of like relieving too. So just started throwing the piss out of the ball, ended up making a squad. I was kind of upset. Like I was going to repeat single A, even though I had been there like 3 years prior.
Yeah.
But I was like, at the time, man, I was like, nothing's going to freaking phase me. I was like, give me a job, like, give me a ball, like, let's go, dude. So that was my best year, like 2015, man, in St. Louis. Ended up starting an A ball, moved all the way up to double A by the end of the year, went to the Arizona Fall League, got a big league spring training invite at the end of the year. Like there's so many things that like you look like, that's the beauty of baseball, right? That's the beauty of freaking baseball. That's why like people ask like, well, dude, like why are you still playing? Like you hear these stories about the freaking janitors now in the World Series, he's just like,
I interviewed Jim Morris on this podcast.
Oh,
I actually
my
I talk to him all the time. We actually become friends, and he's just an incredible dude. And yeah, talk about a crazy story.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that, I mean, that's just beautiful. That's why sports, dude, like sports in and of itself is just so gorgeous in that regard. How can you not be romantic about it? But it was cool. So like 2015, it was just great. And it was like, holy smokes, this whole thing worked, right? Like it really worked, like the simplicity of it, right? Like it kind of like I went through the ringer, but it was like, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I kind of know how to do this thing now, like having known everything I know, up until that point. So I was like, every time I'd go out, I was fixating my thoughts on something different, right? Like, don't worry about the negatives. How can we influence positivity, self-dialogue? We can control that. Let's do it. Like, all right, like change the focal point, change the task instead of, I'm trying to get this hitter out, self-inflict something else. It was for me, it was like, I go out and I literally just say, I'm going to try to throw the ball as hard as I can. And then I'm going to have fun doing it. So I'm out there dancing, doing my thing, and just like, oh gosh, dog it. I was just having fun, and that's where I started to really, truly identify that that's what I needed to do. That was me. That was my identity. For me to be at my very best, it was for me to just be in complete joy of this game, because you get into these systems and you're so focused on like, man, I don't want them to not like me. Right. And they can use any little thing that I do. I'll never forget my first 2 years in Arizona. I got yelled at for wearing the wrong stirrups, or I'm trying to bring attention to myself. I had a beard. Oh, we don't like beards. And it was all these stupid things. And I get it as an organization, right? Like you want to kind of control some aspects of, appearance. But for me, I've always been super open, flamboyant, freaking, whatever. And it was like, that's who I needed to get back to. And if no one liked that, to be honest, man, like it was okay, because I'm going to be true to who I am. And that's like one of my biggest kind of lessons that I learned throughout that process was, don't change who you are to please somebody else. Right. Like stay true to who you are. And more times than not, if you truly have an identity and you have a good foundation and you're not disrespecting or intentionally disrespecting, everyone around you, then like you're probably going to set yourself up for a little bit better performance, right? Because there's a sense of comfort that comes with that. So man, that 2015 was a really cool year. And then, moving forward, it was like, finally I figured out like all these things, and it was like, here we go, baby. Like took us a while, but we're here now. Next thing is like big leagues. Look, let's go. And then shoot, I got to big league camp that next year and freaking had to get elbow surgery. So that was like one of those things that took me away from the game that was more injury related. It was the first injury I had to deal with. That was
That was when that injury occurred, during the prior season, or was the off season? When did you
Dude,
find
it
that?
was out of nowhere, man. So I was going to spring training. It was my first big league camp.
Yeah.
And I was still home, and I literally like went to throw one day and literally just couldn't. Like, I didn't know what it was. It was like, okay, I'm going to take a day off. But you also got to realize, like, I think I was like a week away from showing up to camp.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm maybe take 2 days off. Took 2 days off, went to throw. I was like, I can't throw. And then I started like looking at my elbow in the mirror and stuff, and realized like I can't even straighten my arm. I can't even bend my arm. And it started just getting worse and worse every day. I never dealt with an injury physically
Yeah.
before. So I was like, okay, I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, because it was like, do I call St. Louis and do I say, hey, I know it's 4 days before I showed up to my first big league camp, but I can't straighten my arm, or do I just show up to big league camp and try to see if it,
Works his way out.
goes away?
Which
Yeah.
is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So ended up calling them, and they were great through this whole process. Honestly, like I give a lot of credit to the St. Louis organization, because it was like, all right, no, say less. We're getting you on a flight. We're going to fly you to St. Louis, get you your MRI, X-ray. We'll go from there. So it turns out like I had like bone spurs, bone chips that were like lodged in us. Yeah, they were lodged in a certain place that, like, because you hear of guys all the time that have them and throw, but mine got like stuck in a certain spot.
That, they're loose in there, so it all depends on
loose bodies. Yeah, so they gave me an option. Actually, they were like, all right, do you get the surgery? You obviously miss, X amount of time, or do you just rehab it? Because a lot of guys will just rehab it and then it'll go away. And I was like, shoot, man, like I could very much be, making my debut at the end of this year. I want to make sure that this thing's cleaned up, so I don't have that, even just mentally, I don't have that in the back of my head, so I was like, all right, let's clean it up. And they were like, it's a microscopic surgery. It'll be fine. You give it, I think they said 4 to 8 weeks and I'd be back. And I'm like, oh, that's cake, right? Like, as opposed to the alternative of what it potentially could be when we're talking about the elbow.
Yeah.
So I get the surgery. There was this big miscommunication, which is super unfortunate, about how much time I was supposed to be spent in the sling. Dude, this is like bad. So they flew me home the day after surgery, and they were super great. Like, they flew my mom out to take care of me, because as a 23-year-old, I can't take care of myself. So flew my mom out, take care of me, flew me back home. And I was actually kind of hoping that they would just take me to camp, and so I could be around the guys, have a workout there and rehab there. They flew me home, and they kind of went dark for instructions, and they were just like, all right, sling, 2 weeks, cake. So apparently with the surgery that I had, like the microscopic surgery, you're supposed to get out of the sling within the next day, and you're supposed to start challenging your range of motion. I didn't, dude. They told me sling like 2 weeks. They didn't really give me any instructions. So the scar tissue, like the stuff started to heal as I'm in the sling.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see, but like now that's as much as I can straighten my arm. So I have a 35-degree difference. So
and you were never able to work, like have a massage therapist work that sling, that scar tissue.
Dude, so I finally ended up calling them after like 2 weeks and was like, hey, I can't straighten my arm. They told me that I'd be able to straighten it or whatever after 2 weeks. And I was like, hey, I can't straighten. So they flew me to spring training like right away. And we tried to do, the physical therapy, but in my eyes, that's something that
it was too late.
It was like one of those things where, so this is where that surgery that should have been very simple, not simple. I shouldn't word it that way. I preface this all by saying, like, I never blame anyone, right? Like, surgical procedures, like, sometimes they just happen, things happen and whatever. So the unfortunate thing that came about all this was that 4 to 8 week window that I was supposed to come back turned into like 5 months, So I was down 5 months. So I didn't come back till like July, and I had to relearn how to throw a baseball because of the angle now. Yeah. So like
Oh,
I was internally rotating my shoulder earlier because I couldn't get full elbow
yeah,
extension. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
when I came back throwing, I was like, something's wrong. Like this ain't right. I would
yeah.
throw, dude, and like it'd feel super weird, like I'd get super inflamed, because it was like kind of bone on bone
Yeah,
again.
rubbing
And it was
always.
just,
Yeah,
oh man, it was weird. So unfortunately it took 5 months, but learned a lot through that, right? Because that was my first time actually in like a physical like rehab setting, learning how to kind of navigate that in such a way that is still positive, even though it's a very negative environment. But and then when I came back, they sent me on some rehab assignments. I was super worried at first because it was like I'd throw and then I'd wake up the next day and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to touch a baseball. It's so sore, and that was hard for me because I had never been somebody that got hurt, right? Like I've always prided myself on.
were you open with that, or were you hiding that pain? Were you like,
I honestly, I was on a 1-year deal, right? So I was like trying to hide it
yeah,
in
yeah.
such a way that like I didn't want to be like, hey, I can't throw and then
How
go
was your
all year.
velocity? How was your velocity?
So my velocity one day would be like 88, 90. The next day it could be, up to 95, 97. Like it was so weird, like the constant fluctuation. And it was all just dependent on how it was feeling.
How inflamed it
Right.
was?
Oh man, yeah. And it
Yeah,
would get
fuck.
worse and it would I'd get down to like 25 degrees and then one day it would be back up to 35 degrees. So honestly, like it was a direct correlation to how much range of motion my elbow had
Yeah,
to influence my velocity, right? So
yeah,
that part of it kind of stunk. But I finished out the year pretty strong. They sent me back to double A and started just trying to get used to this sensation and this feeling and all these kind of things that came about with it. And that's my first year that I was like, I need to go get innings because I just missed 5 months of the year. So I went. That was my first year going to winter ball in Puerto Rico. So it's cool how everything works out, man. You look at it like that was such a negative thing, but if I had a full season there, I would have never opened the doors to my winter ball experience, in which I go to Puerto Rico now, like every winter,
you do, huh?
to go play.
You're going
Oh
now.
yeah.
You're going this next week, correct?
Yeah. I'm going in a week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I go over there and like, that was such a cool opportunity for me, and so like, I think like the second day that I was there, I actually got a call from St. Louis that they were like, hey, we want to bring you back. Like, we're going to pay you more. We're going to, send you to big league camp again. And I was like, holy smokes, like kind of surprising. Right. So like, that was cool in terms of like what provides confidence externally. Like that was
yeah,
one
of
of those
course.
things where like, oh,
Yeah,
they like me. This was like kind of a new dynamic for me, right? Like I was in 2 organizations prior to that I felt didn't like me.
yeah, yeah.
So that was cool, right? So I spent all winter there. And then so 2017, that's kind of where I'm trying to navigate this elbow thing, and it's just a whole new system to kind of really figure out and start to incorporate protocols. Like there was all new things that I had to do. Like I'd have to wake up every morning and just start to challenge elbow extension just so it wouldn't inflame, and I had to sleep differently, all of these things, man. I can't even lay down now without like my arm just like being hung up in the air. It's kind of weird. There were certain pitches that I can't even throw anymore.
Like what?
Like I couldn't throw a curveball, right? Like I'll show you on
Yeah,
camera.
yeah.
So like I hear, right, and my
It
elbow will
doesn't.
start to turn,
Yeah, yeah,
start to pronate. So with the curveball, you want your wrist, right? Like you want your wrist like neutral, so
yeah,
supinated, right?
yeah,
And throw it like this. So when I go into full throw and try to get challenge, end range of my elbow extension, my wrist will go,
yeah, yeah.
because so like I couldn't throw that. And I love my curveball. So that was unfortunate. But then so 2017 come back, and that was just another weird thing. I go from thinking that this organization loved me. They brought me back, paid me a good amount of money to come back. Got to experience like my true actual first big league spring training around all the guys. Thought I fit in. And then last day of camp, we're going to release you. And I'm like, wait,
What just happened?
what?
Yeah,
And so you're kind of sitting there in one mindset of like, man, things are going good, baby. We're doing this thing, and then in one conversation, your world changes. It's like, what?
And through this whole process, you have an agent, I'm assuming, obviously.
Yeah.
And where is his, like, where's his or hers? Like, where's your agent's mindset? What's their feedback with all this?
Oh, dude, like I'll never forget that conversation because I called him and I was like, anyone need somebody? getting released in spring training is the worst, right? Because everyone's getting released. Everyone's getting rid of guys.
Yeah.
No one's bringing guys on. So I called him. I was like, I need a job. He's like, what? It's like, I just got released. And he was just so like baffled. It was the first time I've like seen my agent like baffled, and I've been through the ringer. So I understand, like, I'll never forget the first time I called him and said, I got released. He was like, yeah, I know that was coming. Yeah, you suck. Yeah. I got you. But this one was like, holy smokes, dude. Like, okay, I guess we'll get on the phone and like see what we got. But, you get released in spring training. And it's just like, what are you going to do?
Were you bullpen or was trying to be a starter at that point? Were you bullpen?
No, so I was bullpen guy. Yeah. So that's when I kind of made a career move coming back to St. Louis. When I first got the opportunity, it was like, that was when I had first experienced that like back end of the bullpen, 8th inning closer type role. Yeah. And that was really cool. I think my personality really kind of meshed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so 2017 that happened and I was like in Florida. So I was like, frick, I gotta go back to California now. Like, what's the next move? It's kind of just a waiting game. And then it was like, all right, I guess we go play indie ball. And that opened up that whole new world for me.
You're 25 at this point? 26.
2017, I was 20.
So you're looking at 3, 4, 5 years. 25. So,
but shoot, dude, that's how baseball is in terms of the age dynamic. Like, you wake up one day and you're young and immature.
Yeah.
And then the next day you're too old for the game.
Yeah.
That's how quick it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's better now that
as a pitcher, I mean, there's more opportunity in your mid to later 20s. But I mean, if you're a position guy, like a catcher or something like that, 19, 20, 21, 22, you're done. By 22, you're,
oh my gosh,
no one's even looking at you.
My dad retired at 31, 32. And he said, like, and this is a testament to why I will play this game until I can't.
Yeah.
He said, like, when I retired, I was in the best shape of my life. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, now I'm 30 and it's like, it's true. Like, I feel freaking fantastic. I feel better now than I did at 18.
Yeah. But your physical level of your training, your understanding of your body, understanding of mechanics, understanding of like just motion and from your hip rotation, your hips, your ankles, like when you watch your videos, like you get the fitness aspect of it, you get the nutritional aspect of it. I thought you went on your crazy fasting for a while and having your so you've played around with enough that you fine-tuned it to figure out what's right for you. So you should be 100%. The next 5 to 6 years, if not more, probably in the best physical shape of your life. And probably the strongest you could be. Like you're probably not even at the cusp of what you're able to do, right? Because you've done so much to take care of yourself, right?
Right.
So
100%.
Independent ball. So you've been in independent ball now for 5 years.
So 2017 was my 2017 was my first experience with it. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska. My third outing got hit with a 110 mile an hour comebacker in the nose. Like, this journey, dude, I can't make this stuff up. Had to miss time, like concussed.
I was going to say massive concussion.
Massive concussion, man. But people will argue that I act like I'm always concussed, so it's fine. So I had to deal with that. And then and then come back.
Oh, it was in Indiana you played, you said? Your first independent?
No, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, Nebraska.
And were any of these independent leagues teams attached to major league teams or no?
Not at the time. They are now. I think all of them are now partners.
Okay.
Which I don't know if anyone still to this day knows what even that means, but they are. And that was actually the first time. So this was 2017. That was the first time where I had a kind of an awakening to, holy smokes, indie ball is legit, right? Like there's a lot of good players, because you have this, and I think a lot of people have this kind of misconception when it comes to indie ball. You think of like adult men's league almost, right? Like everyone on TikTok always gives me crap because I'm playing indie ball, and it's like the way that the MLB has done it over the last couple of years with taking away the jobs from the minor leaguers. Like, are you aware? Like they took away like
yeah,
all those levels.
yeah. And
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh.
and during COVID, I mean, the bare fact
Oh
that
my
they
gosh.
cut and cut and cut. I'll give you a quick little story. Our president of our league here in Brampton, where my son plays and where I'm part of, his son was playing in Purdue College. Catcher, star, complete Zach Fascia, complete stud there. And it was his draft year, and got drafted by, I think it was Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, and decided to go back to school to finish finished last year, and then COVID hit. And then the draft was shrunk. And this guy, if I'm not mistaken, he got the catcher of the year, which is oh my God, what's the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame catcher, Johnny Bench Award. Like this guy was stud, like complete stud. So next year missed the draft year. Then he's going into his draft year at 23 and ended up just signing a free agent contract with Cleveland. He's been in the Cleveland system for the last year and a half. This guy's like 6'3", 6'4", like 220, crazy arm, super athletic. And now he's just in the minors and hoping he doesn't get cut, which is crazy, right? And so the whole minor system is just crazy.
Yeah. I feel so bad for those guys, man. Like I've heard so many stories about COVID and like how just I mean, you're talking about a career. Like what
100%. That one year, like, how many guys I mean, they cut it down to just one round, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No,
draft year.
It was 10 rounds, right?
10 rounds. They cut it down. I know they cut it down.
Well, it went from like 40 to 10.
Okay. That's what it was. I remember the number 1 in the front though. So it was just but that's hundreds and hundreds of opportunities gone.
Oh man. Well, think about like, so when I first got drafted, right? So we had a rookie league. We had an AZL, which was the Arizona League. Yeah. And then we had a advanced rookie league. Right. So that's 3 teams. You're looking at 27 to 28 players on each of those 3 teams.
And those are all gone now.
All gone.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, when they cut 10,000 like minor league players.
Yeah.
And so that's crazy. A testament to like indie ball right now is very, very good.
Yeah.
Very,
we have a few really, really good guys that were both cut. One guy was cut from St. Louis. One guy was cut he was with the Jays, traded to, was traded to Arizona, and he was cut as well during the whole process. And they're both playing Quebec. It was funny you said that. You went to play in Quebec. They both play indie ball in Quebec.
Oh my gosh, they're so good. They're a powerhouse. I love playing there because it's electric. Yeah. That is the biggest compliment I give is they're so passionate about their sports.
Yeah.
So cool story was in 2021. It was I got to start the first day that they were allowed to have fans back there.
Oh, cool.
COVID.
In Quebec?
It was just like, yeah,
very cool.
We were the first team to travel across the border because they had shut it down, right? So then Quebec that year became like a traveling team. They couldn't go to Canada. So our series, we just matched up to where like, all right, they opened the borders, and it was like that was my first Canadian experience. And it was like, this is freaking different, man. Like they were just
they miss their expos, right? They're dying for baseball there. There's a lot of hardcore fans in Quebec. Hardcore fans, man. Yeah. I mean, they've never been the same, and they'll never transfer to J fans. Whoever was a Quebec Expo fan will never be a J fan. That is 100%.
They won it all again this year.
They did again, huh? Yeah.
They're very, good, man.
Good. So your journey now, you're doing your fall, you're doing your winter ball. Like, where's your mind? Like, where? Obviously, majors is where you want to get back to.
Yeah.
Are you still with an agent, or how does this work in indie ball?
Yeah, like technically I am. But it's like I honestly I don't really deal with the agent unless it's like, hey, we have a job opportunity for you. It's kind of one of those things. This is a very interesting time in my life, honestly. It's like the big leagues is always going to be the goal, and we've already discussed about how like just crazy things happen in this game that like if you just are in the right place at the right time and the right opportunity comes, like you could be there, and I'm fully aware of that, and I'm prepared for that. But there's this sense of like peace knowing that I have done everything that I could possibly do within my control to put myself in that position. If it doesn't help out, or if it doesn't happen, then I'm content, right? Like I'm okay because I'm doing something right now that I feel I have a purpose for. And I think that's what anyone really desires, right? In life in general, is just like, give me purpose and give me fulfillment. And those two are probably correlated. So it's like, I have a sense of a purpose with what I'm doing. And I have this kind of sense of responsibility to having gone through everything I've gone through, man. It's like, how could I not share this? Right? Like, how could I not try to, inspire somebody else? Right. Or, I mean, there's a whole different side of this too, right? There's this side of like everything that I've experienced and how I can help other people through their experiences. And then the whole other side of just like, how can I show guys that maybe are struggling with the same thing I struggled when I was in 2014 with the mental stuff? How can I show them the simplicities of the game, and how can I show them the beauty of this game? Because it's really hard oftentimes to love a game that is built on failure, because we don't want to identify with failure, right? And it's really hard, especially at a young age, to identify with that. And there's this fine line, man. And it's like, I still kind of work towards navigating that in terms of, this really, really hard, complicated game, but finding these simplicities within that. And like really just attaching yourself to the simplicities that can then promote this sense of joy, right? Because anything that's, I don't know, I might be weird, because anything that's super hard and you find a little bit of success at it, you're like, ooh, I want it more.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
And
that could translate to any aspect of life, right?
Anything. And it's a quote from a League of Their Own, when he's like, Tom Hanks, when he's like, it's the hard that makes it beautiful. Right. And that's, I find so much kind of.
So I saw you run and gun. I saw you run and gun the other day, one of your videos, 103. So what is your mindset? Do you want to get to 100?
Oh gosh, it's always the mindset. It's funny though, because I'm two different guys, right? So like, when I'm in the regular season, so this past year I actually served as a player coach. So I was pitching coach for our team.
Oh, very cool.
Starting pitcher.
Okay, I was gonna get into that next, but go. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that, but that's awesome. Here you go.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like I lived out two passions.
Did you get two? Did you get two salaries?
Gosh, I wish. I love this stuff so much, man, that I probably just did it for free, right? No, so yeah, that was like my first experience doing both. And although I love it's such a weird mental state, honestly, because I love doing it, but it really affected like my actual performance as a pitcher, because I was like, I wasn't focused on my personal development. I was focused on everyone else's. Right? And so that was the hard part of navigating that, because I found myself like really struggling and not finding enough time for my own work. Right.
Yeah.
So, but I'm two different guys in the sense of, as a starter, I'm like mid to high 80s, touching 92, maybe, if I want to.
Yeah.
I throw 7 different pitches.
Trying to throw 7 pitches.
And then winter ball comes around and I just transform into this hashtag reliever Rob, and I try to throw 100, and I have 3 pitches and like, let's go to work.
What are they? Fastball, slider?
Yeah, so a fastball, slider, and changeup.
Yeah. What's your changeup at? And
it's slow. It's 75. Well, I throw it like this. I got the Vulcan. Yeah,
75. That throws people off, especially if you're 75. Throwing high 90s. That's a good pitch. If you get located nicely, that's a good pitch.
Yeah. It's interesting because everyone's always like, well, what do you enjoy more, starting or relieving?
Yeah,
I was like, I know for a fact I'm just better at relieving. Like I've noticed that since I was in 2015 with St. Louis. Like my stuff plays better, personality kind of matches, but there's nothing better than that starting pitching routine. There's nothing better, man. Like one day is yours.
Yeah.
Like
if you could focus and tone on and really hone your energy. I mean, if you look at Jays Jordan Romano, I mean, that's a guy that was in the system. The Jays trade him. He goes to, I don't know if you know the whole thing, trade him, goes to Texas, and then they sign him like a year later. With everybody thought like this is a local guy that would actually train at our local facility where my son trains at. He's a local kid. So we see him all the time. and gets traded to Texas. Super nice guy, such a good guy. Gets traded to Texas, and we're like, okay, he's done. He'll be in the minors, and chances of coming up, and then all of a sudden he's back, and a year later he's our starting closer, right? Just it's crazy. Yeah. And you talk to him, he's always. He was a starter in the minors, but he always wanted to be he always wanted to be in the bullpen. That was his passion. He wanted to be in the bullpen. So it's the pure opposite, right? Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about throwing high 90s with a couple of pitches and your personality, like I see the bullpen, man. I see it, man.
Oh, yeah.
You see Diaz come out with his music and that trumpet. I mean, you just there's an excitement to that, right?
Oh, well, like I know just the overall stuff just plays better, because like there's so much of the game within the game when it comes to starting. Yeah. And even though I love it, like I love the sequencing and like flipping the lineup over and okay, I threw this guy, his first at bat. Now the second at bat, I'm going to show him this and switch up the looks and all of the little things. But that takes a toll on my performance because I'm so up here. And I've already kind of discussed like how for me to be the best version of myself, I need to turn this guy off. Yeah. Go in and out, do your stuff. Yeah. Just keep it simple, man. Just go. So I'm looking forward to that. Like I'll leave here in a week and I'll get to do that this winter. So it's kind of cool.
Do you have anywhere signed for next year? Or are you same with the same team in New York? Or are you looking to try to hopefully after winter ball get on a field in spring training somewhere pro?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm there's so much like mystery and joy in the unknown. I love it. Like as a ball player, you get that, and it's like,
have you been talking to any teams at all?
No. So I won't really talk to teams until like winter ball actually starts, and like I'll start like teams will reach out and stuff because they see me throwing like winter ball is usually the one thing that like gets me actually a lot of interest because I am a reliever and like I do pretty well over there. So like that's how I got signed by Texas in 2018. I got signed by the Rangers out of indie ball because that was in 2017 I was playing in Puerto Rico, but I got to go to the Caribbean World Series in Mexico. And when you get to do that, there's like a lot of scouts, and stuff. And I was throwing the ball really well at the time.
And what team did you play for?
So I was with the Puerto Rican team in the world.
So how does that work? How does that work? Like passport
in the Puerto Rican League, so the Puerto Rican League, the winner from that league moves on to the Caribbean Series. So it's like any other league, like the Dominican, Venezuelan, Cuban, Colombian, Panama, like so they play like a Caribbean World Series. People get it mistaken with like the World Baseball.
Yes, that was what I was thinking about right now. Okay.
Yeah, the Caribbean World Series is from like all the winter leagues. Okay, right? So everyone every country has like somewhat of a winter league. It's like the winter. Man, that's hard to say. The winner of that league will move on to the Caribbean Series, and it's in a different spot every year. So that was a cool opportunity. And then I got signed by Texas. And that was when that's a whole nother freaking story. Went to Texas, blew my lat out. And that was when like my brand started. It was in 2018. I knew I was going to miss a substantial amount of time. And I was like, perfect. Writing's on the wall. Let's dive in.
I remember seeing that. And and you follow your journey all the way through. I want to ask you, I got three more questions for you. Pitching, you said pitching coach, and that was something I've been playing around with my head because I wanted to ask you that from the beginning, but I wanted to wait till more of the end. Do you see yourself eventually getting to that role into the majors or into a pro team as a pitching coach? Because you obviously know your shit and obviously know how to teach it and you know how to break it down. Is that somewhere you can see yourself in 10 years doing?
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I don't know
if
I
good at
this on air, but I love the private sector. Like I love the one-on-one stuff.
Yeah.
And I love I love doing my own thing, right? Like I've intentionally have done what I've done with my brand to put myself in a position to where like I don't have to listen to anyone.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do what I want. And
I mean, that's being an entrepreneur, which is I've been doing that for 27 years, right? I understand it.
Facts. Yeah. But I've seen like the puppeteering that is professional baseball at a time. Right. Yeah. And I get it. Like, it's no disrespect on anyone. I understand if you're running an organization, you want everyone to be on the same page. The guys that get paid the most money are going to have probably more say than there's, and like, that's just something that kind of has always turned me off from like, the coaching aspect of it. Like if I'm going to be passionate about my coaching, I'm going to be passionate about my players. Like I want to make sure that I'm doing as I see fit for their benefit, knowing what I have gone through from both the mental and physical side.
Yeah.
And there might not always be an agreement there, but I know when I'm on the private sector, like the things that I do from a remote training standpoint right now. And like, once we hop off this, I'll run over to the park and do my physical lessons with guys, but it's all me. Like I get to have that say in what I see to be the best.
Do you eventually see yourself doing? I'm throwing this question at you. I've owned a gym. I've done other stuff. Do you see yourself owning a facility eventually?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. I want to, like, I'm in a good spot, but right now it's difficult because I'm still focused.
Yeah, this is later on
my stuff.
Yeah. And there's still a good opportunity for you to get to where you want to get to, and at least live out that dream. I think there's a huge possibility for that still to happen. So
right. Yeah, I'm too stubborn, man. I think I'll be 47 and I'll be like, nope, I still got it, baby. Let's go. But I think that is definitely something that I want to explore.
And I think your branding right now is on par. Like your branding is hitting it, and everything you're doing, and just your mechanics, and your breakdown videos and all that. It just is leading you to having a very successful facility. Successful facility. I totally see that happening. Your father, what does your dad mean to you?
What does he mean to me?
Yeah, tell me what your dad means to you.
He means, it's a very like simple, complex answer or question. Whoa. I spent a lot of my younger years I'm going to say this for lack of a better phrase, taking my dad for granted. I didn't realize when I was younger what it meant to be like prepared in such a way to like at least provide yourself with confidence and conviction for what you were trying to do and accomplish. Okay. So what I mean by that is there's truth in confidence stemming from what you put into it. Right. Yeah. And he did that with me without me even like knowing it at a young age. So he instilled in me this desire to always be prepared, whether it be on the baseball field, the basketball court, or even in the classroom. And that goes beyond anything that I could ever like appreciate in life, because that he molded that into me. Right?
Indirect, like that I call it indirect mentoring, right?
Right. Yeah. Miyagi'd me.
Yeah.
Black Swan. But and I never knew it. And as I get older, I've always like, I'm just a very, very curious individual. And I'll sit there and be like, okay, why am I this way? Why do I just have this burning desire to work hard and accomplish this and want to do that and I look back and it's like, well, that's pops, that's mom too, right? It's just good parenting. And I'm so appreciative for that. And still like, shoot, man, I come back, there's a reason why when I am done with my season, I come back and I bunk up with mom and dad for X amount of weeks until I go to my next spot, because I really do, find myself as a better version of myself when I'm around, that crowd. And it's something that, I'll never have to sit there and thank him for, because he knows that was just him, being a dad. And at the same time, just being a very good coach. Yeah. And, honestly, it was my doing of my early struggles in my career, because I was too like stubborn and prideful to continue to listen to his mentoring, right, throughout that. But at the same time, and he'll attest to this too, is like, that was just something that I needed to go through.
A learning process.
Yeah. For me to truly see that through, his lens. So
I love that,
man. You should probably see my videos. He's freaking he's still doing it.
That's why I asked you. My dad was my best friend, and I lost my dad about 17 months ago. And I teach people this all the time. I coach a bunch of guys, and I teach people living with no regrets. And just you playing catch still with your dad, you going home and bunking with your parents and being them and spending that time with them. these are all things that you're building these memory bank that one day when they're not here, knock on wood, it's a long time from
Oh
now.
man.
Those are the things you're going to hold to your heart the rest of your life.
Oh
And those
gosh. Well,
stories. So
like,
I think that's so special. And I love that. That's why I'm saying that, because I love seeing those videos of you and your dad playing
yeah.
catch still. I think
Oh,
it's awesome.
it's probably the most fun content that I create. And like, it's funny how it's happened because so my dad actually, and this is a whole nother side of this, my dad was the one that instilled this, I guess, desire to always film my stuff. So my dad filmed, like, we still have video from when I was like 9 years old in Little League, like always filming.
Which is awesome for later on in life to get a documentary going.
Gosh. Except knowing my dad, he lost it. It's all gone. Like, he just like didn't know where he put it. But now, like, so when I first came back, so I spent my entire rehab from my lat surgery in Omaha. I was training out there, and that was kind of when I first opened my brand, and I was just nomad, freaking all on my own. I loved it. And then I came back here right before COVID hit, and like we would throw together, and he would be like super anti, don't want to be on camera, don't want to be on the mic. And now it's like, I told him yesterday too, I was like, yesterday's gonna be a light day, like I won't even bring the camera. He's like, oh, I don't want to go then. I'm like, oh wow, this has gone full circle, bud. You know, but yeah, so I almost lost my dad too. He's had some heart complications over the past few years. I'm not like super vocal about this, but like it's another thing that you kind of sit there and realize, almost, you know, you don't realize how much you love something until it's gone. And you live every day, you know. For me, I just was so fortunate growing up because I always had a catcher, and then I had a brother that was a catcher. So it was like anytime I needed a throw, anytime I needed anything, like my family is so freaking supportive of this journey, of this dream. But he had some heart complications. You know, he's like, he had to get an assisted living device put in his chest, and there was this, you know, we might not have him after this. Like, this is a very risky surgery, blah, blah, blah. And that's when it was like, holy smokes, right? Like, I can't take this, not for granted, but it was just
but
like,
you have a second chance, which is
and it was like, I gotta truly, like, I gotta be mindful of that at any point in time, like it could just be gone.
Yeah,
you know,
that's me. Honestly, that was May 7th last year. It was just it was a year and a half now, so a year before. And it was just Friday. It was I used to talk to my dad 2 to 3 times a day. And we talked on May 6th. It was 10 at night. I tell the story all the time. We talked at night, had a conversation for about 20, 30 minutes on the phone. And then I got that call. And you always hear, if you get a call at 6 in the morning, it's not a good call. And I got that call Friday at 6 in the morning. And he just got up, went to the bathroom, walked back to my mom, never smoked, never drank, power walked every day, just collapsed, and that was it, done. Heart attack. And so there was no goodbye. There's no closure to it. Right. So you having that and understanding that, appreciate that. I appreciate that, brother. I mean, it's so special. It's so
I'm sorry
special
to hear that.
Yeah, it's life, right? It's life. I mean, but you have that opportunity to still, and you're young still, to have that opportunity to really, really do these things with them. And so it's pretty cool that you're still doing that. And I appreciate that. That's why I had to bring that up and ask.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it's everyone too. It's like because like my whole family will roll up to the park. Like, we freaking haven't missed a beat since my brother was 11 and I was 8. Like, we've been doing this, right? Like, this is our life, man. Like, I kid you not, we've been doing this since I was born, and since my brother was born. He's 3 years older than me, but this has been our life. And it literally just like, we don't change it.
I love it.
We're like, hey, it's time to go to the parks, man. Like, let's go. Like, everyone's a part of this, right? And that's why I say I'm going to be able to do this, and I'm going to be able to see this journey out for as long as I can, due to the support that I have, right? It's a testament to that. So I mean, as I get older, and as I still continue to get older, I just start seeing it so much more clear each and every day, just how appreciative I am of that. And I do my best to be super just mindful of it every single day. But you know how time goes by so fast. And you know, and it's like, how much control do we have of that?
You don't. I'm 45 and I feel like I'm 30 still. I take care of myself, but mentally I feel like I'm like 25, 30. I got a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. Like, time flies by. Time flies by. And I'm a very active dad. Like, they're my workout partners. We go to the gym every single day together. I do baseball with my son every day. I do track my dog. So I try to be as active, just like your dad is active and is part of their everyday journeys as much as I can now, because I realize once they go to college and stuff, life changes, right? So this is awesome. This has been awesome, brother. I don't want to take more of your time. It's already been an hour and a half. where could our audience find you? How could they get a hold of you? If somebody wants pitching, coaching, like give me all the information.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, the better question is where can they not find me? Holy smokes. I'm everywhere, right? I'm everywhere, man. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, freaking MySpace. Remember MySpace?
I do remember
MySpace. Holy smokes. R.I.P. Tom. So Instagram, Robby Row12, TikTok, Robby Row12. TikTok's just the move, I guess. Yeah.
It now, yeah, but you can't get a hold of no one. You can't get a hold of you on TikTok, but you can follow you. Yeah, but TikTok is. I just got on it about 6 weeks ago, and it's just the first time I'm like I held on for the longest time, but I'm like now I just run it with my podcast. But it's
podcast clips do well.
Yeah, they're doing well. It's taking off. Yeah, it's taking off.
Yeah,
because we got a lot. Yeah, we get a lot of big guests, so it's taking off. I'm utilizing their name, so it's helping the growth pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. So it's so funny how this whole thing. So my whole brand like started with podcasting. I was literally just like, I remember being in Puerto Rico, just like I love to talk. I'm gonna start a podcast, and just throw in my Apple freaking headphones and we'll just talk. And it was like one thing led to another, and it was like, oh, I'm going to create content. Like I always filmed everything because I was just obsessed with the process of it. But now I was like, I'm going to create it. Oh, that's great. So my podcast is the Robby Row Show, the Robby Row Show baseball podcast, I believe. And if you're listening, you want to reach out, whether it be like mental stuff or baseball or whatever, I actually have a question platform on my website, therobbyrowshow.com/ask. If you want to reach out, because I stopped, like it's so weird how it all just kind of happened in the blink of an eye. I went from being the guy that was like, I'm going to answer every single direct message, I'm going to respond to every comment, and now it's like, shoot, dude,
overwhelmed.
I feel so bad. I feel so bad because I can't kind of talk to people and whatnot. So that's probably the best way. It goes right to my inbox. But yeah, man, I'm everywhere. I love what I do. I'm very, very, very fortunate to be able to do what I do. But at the same time, it's really cool because like everyone has the ability to do this, right? We live in such a very unique day and age with connectivity and cameras and freaking microphones, man. It's so cool in that regard. So, awesome. You've been doing it for 27 years, so you get it. It's like, it's such a grind. It's so it's so hard, but at the same time, like it's so joyful to wake up and be like, I'm doing this for
yourself.
However much I put into it is what I'm going to get back. That's 100%, the cool part.
100%. And your energy is infectious too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I try.
I appreciate this, bro. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. It's been fun. Thank you.